Good. A lot of colleagues are probably still negotiating, but we have 90 minutes allocated, so we will kick off with the event, taking advantage of the various speakers that are with us today. So thank you for joining us today in the Berlin room at the Bonn Climate Conference. We have 90 minutes to look at the local climate adaptive living facility mechanism as a non-market approach for adaptation in least developed countries, small island developing states, and Africa. My name is Sophie de Coninck. I'm managing the local facility, which is hosted by UNCDF and support currently 32 countries in their effort towards addressing locally led adaptation. I'll be moderating today's event, but we have 4 panelists and a keynote speakers that will guide us through the subject. So I would like to call them now to be sitting with me. We have Unamai Gordon, Principal Director for Climate Change at the Climate Change Division in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation in Jamaica. Thank you, Unamai. We have Mr. Jefferson Nyandibo, Manager for Multilateral Environmental Agreements and UNFCCC National Focal Point at the Environmental Protection Agency of Liberia. Thank you, Jefferson. We also have Mr. Evans Davie Njewa, Chief Environmental Officer and UNFCCC Focal Point at the Ministry of Natural Resources and Climate Change of Malawi. And joining us later, because he's still now speaking with the G77, we will have Mr. Antwi-Boasiako Amoah, who I will introduce. So thank you all again for joining us. We are also delighted to welcome Dr. Mao Hack, the Director of the Department of Climate Change at the General Secretariat of the National Council for Sustainable Development at the Ministry of Environment in Cambodia. So Dr. Hack will be opening our discussion with a keynote address. But before we do so, there may be a few just housekeeping items to get underway. So we aim to keep 30 minutes at the end of the session for questions from the floor or from remote participants. All speakers, including anyone posing a question, should speak into one of the microphones provided. Otherwise, the online audience will not be able to hear you. And then for the audience joining online, we invite you to pose your questions, and you can do so through the chat facility available on your screen. The questions will be conveyed back to the room. Before I pass the floor to Dr. Hack, we just would like to start by showing a short video to introduce the local climate adaptive living facility, after which we'll go into the keynote and the various, interventions. Thank you very much.
Climate change is hitting the poorest communities hardest. Local action demands systemic change and sustained finance. The local climate adaptive living facility, hosted by UNCDF, bridges this finance gap. LOCAL is a flexible mechanism that drives finance to the local government level, empowering communities for locally led climate adaptation. Launched in Cambodia and Bhutan in 2011, LOCAL is now a global mechanism. A growing number of countries have joined as LOCAL partners. Others are consolidating their country mechanisms, launching them, or designing initiatives. LOCAL works because it is a mechanism that is embedded in country systems, can be adapted to meet local needs, but with standardized quality assurance and monitoring. To date, LOCAL has mobilized $125 million and counting, working with subnational government in Africa, Asia, the Caribbean and Pacific for locally led climate adaptation. LOCAL is owned by the countries that sign up to the mechanism. The LOCAL board is made up of representatives from participating countries that are among the world's most vulnerable to climate change. Our local ambassadors know that LOCAL works.
Moçambique é testemunho de que este é mecanismo que funciona, direcionado para as comunidades, com impacto direto na vida das famílias moçambicanas. Daí a necessidade de países iguais com vulnerabilidades climáticas como a de Moçambique.
In Mozambique, communities are identifying what they need and driving action.
A comunidade é que sabe tudo o que eles precisam.
LOCAL actions are as varied as the communities where they are being implemented. No two projects are identical, just as no two villages are the same. So, in Niger, communities have identified activities to address water shortages, drought and changing rainfall patterns. In Benin, communities are engaged in irrigation improvements and investment in vegetable gardens. In Bangladesh, ponds are being excavated to serve the water needs of marginalised and landless communities. In the mountainous region of Bhutan, where climate change impacts vary from valley to valley, village to village, LOCAL actions include irrigation, landslide prevention, flood adaptation, and more. LOCAL empowers local governments in developing and least developed countries to take decisive action, benefiting millions of the world's most vulnerable people. LOCAL, financing locally led adaptation.
Thank you. So just on time after the video, it's my pleasure to welcome Antwi-Boasiako Amoah, Deputy Director of Climate, NAP Coordinator at the Environmental Protection Agency of Ghana. Thank you for joining us. So I think the video gives a good overview, I hope, of where we are today with 32 countries, 12.5 million indirect beneficiaries from the 322 local governments that are participating at this point. So what may be important to point, it was a bit mentioned in the video, is that the local climate adaptive living facility, although it was born as a project one day in Cambodia, we'll hear from Dr. Mao, it has really evolved into something that is more simply hosted by UNCDF, owned by the countries. And in practical terms, it means that the countries meet at least once a year together to jointly decide and agree on the priorities. So the last such event was held last month in Brussels, and we had over 100 participants from the 30 or so countries. The reason for that number is because at this point we also encourage the various ministries engaged, Ministry of Local Governments, Climate and Finance or equivalent, to co-lead the mechanism in each country. So again in Brussels, that meeting was also followed by the second ministerial meeting, bringing together 23 high-level officials from the local countries and 17 ministers in charge of environment or climate change, for that matter, that are jointly advocating for the further recognition of this particular approach or financing mechanism, because it allows the countries to use their own systems beyond project approaches and use those systems to channel finance, resources, capacity building support to the local communities through the local governments. And that advocacy includes the proposal to present LOCAL as a non-market approach under Article 6.8 of the Paris Agreement, which was done through a range of submissions earlier this year, as picked up in the synthesis report and further presented last week at the workshop on the same topic. So against this backdrop, we'd be happy to really hear the views of a range of parties from various regions. And before we go any further, I would like to hand over the floor to Dr. Hack. Dr. Hack, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Sophie. First, I would like to express my sincere thanks to Local for inviting me to deliver remarks for this important events. Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, I think based on the videos, we can see that we still not yet move out of the basic need of the people. So I think many things that our country have to do in order to respond to the basic need of the local people. First, I would like to share some information of the country, and then I will go straight to the cooperation and support from Local for Cambodia. I think Cambodia also similar to other countries in the world. We are the more impact to the climate change, and of course increasing loss of our human lives, properties, and also environment, natural resource as a whole. As you have also know, the combination of climate change and COVID-19 pandemic, of course, it caused a lot of impact to our economic developments and also human life. Luckily for Cambodia, I would say that right now we have 0 cases in recent week for COVID-19. So I would say that it is a good opportunity for all of you who plan to visit Cambodia. So don't worry about COVID-19 anymore. But still be very cautious. You know, it can happen everywhere. And of course, the government spends a lot of money for climate change response, especially we spent around 2% of GDP in 2019. You know, we prioritize economic developments. However, another budget we have to spend for for climate change crisis. And beyond that, you know, COVID-19, we spent another budget for this. So it was a double crisis for us. An assessment showed that the economic impact of climate change is by around 10% of our GDP by 2050. So we feel that it is also contribute to the impact of economic development of the countries. However, after UNFCCC members, Cambodia has made effort in order to address impact of climate change. Of course, we developed a number of national communication, policy, and strategies. And the first important document we call National Adaptation Program Action. We developed in 2006, and we proposed around 39 project, and it's still validate, of course, and only few projects that implement after our NAPA develop. And then in 2013, Cambodia developed 10-year strategic plan. It is the first strategic plan for the countries in order to develop the country toward green, low carbon, climate resilient, equitable, sustainable, and knowledge-based societies. And you know, I would like to inform you that Cambodian don't have NAP, and we use adaptation part of a national strategic plan as a NAP. However, we plan to develop NAP soon. Of course, the country has mainstream climate change into national strategic development plan, policy strategies, and also sectoral development strategies of the line ministries. Besides that, we also mainstream climate change into subnational development plan and also budgeting. And I think it is very important with the support from local, the country can mainstream climate change to subnational budgeting and development plan. The countries develop and submit the first NDC in 2015, and then 2020 we develop and submit our updated NDC and indicate that the country expect to reduce around 42% of total GDP of total emission by 2030. And also we raised a number of adaptation projects. I think as you may know that our country, of course, we prioritize adaptation, very important. However, we try to balance both mitigation and adaptation. And based on the recent assessment of the submitted updated NDC show that the country need to to put more in order to bring our 2 degree, our temperature rise to 2 degrees or even 1.5. Having seen that, the country developed the long-term strategy for carbon neutrality and submit in 2021. And under our long-term strategies, of course, we not only consider only emission reduction, but also we try to balance between economic development, job creation, environmental sustainability, and we also access adaptation benefit as well. So as I said, adaptation is still the main priority of the countries. Participants, I also would like to share some cooperation and also support for local. I would say that Cambodia offer a good example of what we can be achieved using local, so-called climate adaptive living facilities. With 10 years of local experience to date, and we are preparing for further national rollout. I think other countries signing up to local can look to Cambodia as a guide for what is to come and what is possible. The increasing relevance of local government, of course, emerged in 2028 when we develop our organic law. And by then, the role of a subnational authority play very important, and not only in the area of climate change, but in different aspects as well. And, I would say that Cambodia try to give the authorization to the local authority for environmental management, especially for waste management, since it is a very headache issue in the country. Since the establishment of our subnational authorities, especially we call a National Committee for Subnational Democratic Developments, we have a cooperation between UNCDF and Cambodia in order to bring transformative change at local governance. Cambodia was in fact among the first country to pilot local development finance instruments that are now being used globally. This successful relationship continues to grow until today and has already proven its efficiency, enabling Cambodia to respond and adapt to growing climate crisis through the implementation of local. The UNCDF, in short, and its secretariat mainstream climate change at a subnational level, as I said, using a local mechanism. And of course, Cambodia and Bhutan, luckily the first country in the world to pilot local. That is today global climate financing instrument being deployed in over 30 countries. I think without the successful implementation of the two countries, maybe it hard to convince other countries to participate as well. So we would say that when the trend increasing the participation from the other country, it would say it means that the approach and mechanism is acceptable and applicable. Some 100 billion US dollar, of course, promised during the conference of the party. I think maybe during the 2009 in Copenhagen, that they promised to provide 100 billion US dollar to fight against climate change. However, still right now not yet achieved. So I think it is the time that our developing and least developed country need to fight more in order to get this benefit. If we show this video, they have to know that right now we need the basic need, so they have to consider about that. Experience in Cambodia show local is an effective mechanism for localizing or implementing our LDCs. Using local performance-based climate change resilient grant, we are able to channel finance to local governments. On this, I would say that I also the person who tried to implement this PBCR, and I would say that this approach is very effective in the countries. Of course, a number of challenges faced, but we need to explore the solution, and when we can solve it, of course, it's very easy to scale up to the other area in the countries. To date, over 1.5 billion people in Cambodia have indirectly benefit from adaptation action implemented by local using PBCR grant in 50 districts across countries. Projects are typically small scale, focused mainly on infrastructures, for example, the construction of a road, a bridge, or renovation and improvement of irrigation system or water infrastructure. I think it is very important for the country like Cambodia, since we are rely on agriculture, and the agriculture that we do, we rely on rain, we rely on sky, but with the increasing impact of climate change, it's hard for our country, to adapt to situation. So I think the building of infrastructure is very important in order to make our people to be resilient or adapt to increasing impact of climate change. Cambodia continue to work with Green Climate Funds. I would like also to inform you that Cambodia, especially the subnational authority, become the first one with the support from local to become an accredited entity for GCF. However, even we accredited entity, but a number of process still needed in order to get the money for the implementation. And on this, Cambodia still continue to work with Green Climate Fund to work accessing the promised resources so that we can move forward to our plan for subnational rollout of local and deliver sustainable and workable adaptation action for Cambodia nationwide. And I would like to encourage that a country can choose the modality of the Cambodia, when we become accredited entity. Of course, the process is not that easy, but it also good for our country as well. UNCDF and local have secured 1 million grant from Korea Ministry of Environment and K-Water for public-private partnership to deliver water infrastructure solution to remote areas. This innovation action can position Cambodia as a pioneer in the field of adaptation. This is just one of the examples that we get the cooperation between UNCDF and also local. However, we also mobilize a number of support in order to implement adaptation project in the country. And as I said, we focus mainly on water infrastructure and agriculture. We would say that local mechanism enable parties to implement their LDCs through local climate action and implementation by increasing local investments, related capacity building, and technical support in the countries, thereby building resilient communities, local economy, and contribute to achievement of Paris Agreement and related sustainable development goal. I would say that in order to build our resilience to climate change, I think the building of family economy is very important. If we don't have a strong family economy, I think it's hard. And then we have to build local market. Without local market, I think it is also difficult for us to build a strong resilience to the adverse impact of climate change. The local mechanism also contribute to a sustainable development goal, and I would like to raise a few. For example, SDG 1 poverty eradication, local mechanism in Cambodia has contributed to improving the livelihood of the household and individual by promoting green and resilient communities and local economies. SDG 2, zero hunger. Through local, Cambodia invests in climate resilient agriculture, contributing toward achieving food and nutrition security. I think it is very important. We don't want anyone no food. And even the government has set the policy that we don't let anyone die because of no food. So I think the support from local is really go in line with our policy and strategies. And then sustainable development goal number 6, clean water access and sanitation. I always say that in some remote area, we don't say that access to clean water. Even access to water is still the problem, especially during the dry season. However, with the support from local, we invest in clean drinking waters and sanitation, including a climate-proofing water supply system. For SDG number 11, sustainable city and community, local country invest in climate adaptive infrastructures. And then, of course, for SDG 13, it is important, the SDG goal, climate action, which is the main SDG that local mechanism contribute to. So I would say that a number of SDG, of course, can be achieved. And I think it's still more that we needed to do in order to ensure that our people live in peace, prosperity, and climate resilience. And on this, we may know that this year, at the end of this year, we will have COP27. So we expect that the COP27 become a crucial event for developing and least developed countries. Therefore, I would like to suggest that it is important for UNFCCC embrace local as an existing non-market approach. So I would like to end my remark and thank you very much once again.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hack. So I think it's very encouraging to see, the progression of local in Cambodia with 50 districts. I think it's more than a third of the country that's been covered, and at least four different sources of finance, including government-owned resources. So that's very inspiring for other countries. And you were referring to other countries actually learning from each other, experience, including Cambodia and Bhutan. I think all the countries in blue on the map somehow approach the local facility as they heard about, the stories and the experience of other countries that were already practicing that particular instrument. So thank you very much for sharing that experience. Now, while we've heard from Cambodia, a country that's been working with the performance-based grant for climate change for about 10 years now, maybe we turn to Jamaica. You've recently begun designing a local intervention under the umbrella of the NAP process. And so it would be very interesting for us on MI to hear today what is it that attracted Jamaica to the local facility, and why do you see it being part of this effort in the context of the NAP process? How do you think that SITS in particular could benefit from local also being recognized as a non-market approach? Thank you. The floor is yours.
So thank you so much, Sophie. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, let me also recognize my fellow panelists, and thank you, Doc, for that inspiring first remarks. And let me also recognize the colleagues online. I hear that there are people online. I want to really thank you for giving Jamaica the opportunity to participate in this session. I think it's important for us, and as the map will show, we are the outlier on the map there. We are the first country in the Caribbean, so we really are appreciative of this opportunity to just share why. As we all know, and we are in the SBs, Article 6 is the bedrock of the Paris Agreement. It is at the heart of actions under the Paris Agreement. And as you know, I have my pin here. We are the co-chair also of the NDC partnership. We co-chair along with the UK government. And so we see tremendous value in just recognizing local as a non-market approach, as we discuss along the way, and as we look at approaches which can be beneficial to the country. A lot of people who negotiate in Article 6 would never even think of looking at the article, but Article 6.8 is where for SIDS and LDCs becomes important. And when we look at local as a tried and tested mechanism for climate finance delivery, and we saw in our first introduction to local the video from Cambodia, and therefore it for us it would be of tremendous benefit to Jamaica. And not only Jamaica, but across the region in terms of accelerating action on the ground and providing really this clear framework for action. There is really, I was saying just now that we thought that when we left Glasgow, we had this real agreement to move forward. This SB's not giving us hope as negotiators, but we continue to fight. As the doc said, the fight is becoming hard. But really there is no time to waste anymore. And therefore, when it comes to adaptation, I think local, with the over 10 years experience, in Cambodia here it's 10, I was writing here, 10 years, in delivering adaptation activities on the ground in a variety of contexts. We have have to build on the value added and not to do things over, and to build on the valuable experience that you have gained and shown, to ensure that more finance and technical capacity and capacity building support are directed at the local level and are crowded in for action. And therefore, the cooperation among the countries that we see, we felt that it was incredibly important for us. You know, Jamaica like first, right? We are first at sprints, we are first at bobsledge. So we thought it was important for us to lead by that known example, to become the first country in the Caribbean to really address and to formally engage local, which we did as well. And it is really for us a fact that is really daunting and exciting because of the disparity in where it is being implemented, but also the varieties in the region. And so we find it really a little bit daunting with the small team that we have, but also really very exciting for the new mechanism. And I think it is daunting because it adds pressure, as you know, on my division and my department, to ensure that we represent in the region and we represent the Caribbean well, and that we provide this extremely sound basis, if we are going to expand as you have expanded across Africa, that we provide this sound basis for expansion and replication, and also that it justifies your investment in Jamaica. And so I think it is indeed worth it. But also that it in terms of the planning and the financing at the local level, we know what that could mean. And we keep saying that adaptation is local, but we also see that we continue to operate at the central level, and therefore, under Article 6.8, I think this is the mechanism that we would want to support. I think for obvious reasons, and that's why we are all here talking about adaptation. It is a priority for us, and anything that will help us to advance our role and our work in adaptation becomes also very exciting. And the hurricane season is upon us. We thought it would start on the 1st of June. It started on the 15th of April. And therefore, we are in even before we expected it. And therefore, each year it throws up these new vulnerabilities for us. And the communities and the townships, they are on the front line. And therefore, whether because we are threatened or the livelihoods are at risk and so, then the health of the economies becomes critical, and the adaptation options and the resilience becomes important and is paramount to us. On the other hand, the local facility presents this exciting mechanism and the opportunity for us to create this vertical integration that we see that it could, between the LDCs on the one hand and the NAPs on the other hand, and the processes, and to integrate all the local processes. And the possibilities for local in that regard is endless as we integrate. So we find that very exciting and as well. In Jamaica, we have designed the local to facilitate adaptation really at the local level. And Jamaica is one country that has local government authority. Not all countries in the Caribbean have that. And to ensure that the communities, in the communities, in the parishes, the 14 parishes, that alignment, we bring alignment both at the local level to the central. So we see an opportunity for this alignment. And also the alignment with the NAPs and the NDCs. We are in the process of developing the national lab, and we are in the process of implementing local at the local level. And they are parallel processes, so we will see that integrated. Both of them are going to be run in parallel. And in fact, in Jamaica, local is now gaining traction. People are talking about a local NAP because we have been promoting, and it is being developed under the overarching NAP process as we see it. And jointly, because local government is managed by one ministry, and climate change is managed, and in that process is governed by one ministry, then both ministers are also engaged. So we have the Ministry of Local Government and we have the ministry with responsibility for climate change integrated into the process and driving the action. And there is an expectation that we will go there in terms of the development planning. We believe that local will give us a boost in the right direction with the local communities, and some of the hurdles that we continue to have in engagement of the local community and channeling financing at the local level. I think we see this opportunity with the engagement of local. And that is why we are supporting strongly this effort to recognize local within the system as a non-market mechanism. And we will continue to advocate with whatever voice. Our minister became the latest local ambassador, and we will continue to advocate for local as an NMA. As you know, Sophie, I sent you the word. He went to Stockholm with the message, and therefore we will continue to do that. I want to thank you as well, and we look forward. I want to thank you and Raphael for the support to us as a team in the region. But thank you all, and I'll be here to take any question. Thank you, Sophie.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Unemai. Thank you for leading us in the Caribbean. I hope you will sprint fast so that other countries can follow through and sprint fast with your access to Green Climate Fund for the local NAP, which is a new expression, a new concept. So another good innovation there. Thank you so much. So with those words, I'd like to turn now to Mr. Nyandibo from Liberia. So we're also just about starting in Liberia, designing the mechanism, and Liberia is already somehow taking a lead in working with other countries in securing recognition for local as a non-market approach for increased finance and resources, capacity building support, and other forms of support for local adaptation. We've heard you last week also at the workshop on the same topic on Tuesday. The floor is yours, Jefferson. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Sophie. Ladies and gentlemen, the panelists, our colleagues participating online. Again, I'd like to thank Sophie and the local family for inviting me to participate on this panel. But I quickly like to say to all of us, the discussion, as much as my voice will be added to what is being said, but I can suggest to all of us that I more than 100% agree with what you may have just said. Local should be seen by each and every one of us or our countries as a mechanism that is coming just about the right time. Somebody will ask why, and I will tell you, if we want to be very sincere with ourselves, Article 6 is one of the shortest texts in the context of the Paris Agreement, but it is one of the most complicated articles within the agreement that we are still struggling to fully understand. So why would I want to agree with you that there can be no faster and better mechanism for us to engage other than having UN local at this point in time? I say so for several reasons. The complication of Article 6 is one. The second could be, how many of our countries in here have nationally accredited institutions to access JEF or GCF funding? I might not be right, though, but I think my country is one of those. Why do we need local as a country? That's just one of the simplest reasons. We need a mechanism that may have its own administrative procedures, but a mechanism that will help our country to narrow the gap between the policy decision makers and the directly affected and impacted communities within our country. And the mechanism being introduced is take it at your political and decision level. But there is a global conceptual content that my colleague spoke on earlier, leave no one behind. If that content is to be implied and applied, then we must find a mechanism that will, of course, be as inclusive as local and participatory as local, so that it is not a matter of class culture. It's a matter of the impact of climate change being addressed across all sectors. Liberia support local as a non-market approach under Article 6.8. And I just said it. UNIME, if I didn't have the time, I would have just said you spoke for all of us. But just allow me to add one or two. We need local. Many of us as countries, it is challenging for them as it is for us. And to want to believe that they are just going to succeed today and grab all of us to become beneficiaries, no, it's a process. But looking from what they have done in other countries, and the activities that I, as a country, Liberia, have done, we look at to the level where we are at Liberia. You heard us say we are now in the, let me call it the blue zone. Means that each and every one of us will get there. And when we shall have gotten there, we will realize where we came from for the last 20 years and where we intend to go in the next couple of years. That means the paradigm shift. It is not a competitive instrument for us in Liberia, no. And we don't rather intend to see those who have been intervening, whether in mitigation or adaptation. We don't want to appreciate them. No, please, let us not be misunderstood. The point we are making is a lot has been done. A lot needs to be done. And so there is the need for us to continue to add on the lots that have been done so that many, many more lots can be done. And that's the reason why we, last month or so, or sometime, we were in Brussels, let me just pull it that way. We all assembled in Brussels as local member countries to design our engagement process on advocating why local should be a mechanism. We agree in Brussels that we'll come to Bonn SB 56, we'll continue our advocacy, and we will sit in Brussels, Bonn, and agree on the mechanism of further advocating for local as a mechanism at COP27. I'd like to state here that whatever it is we started in Brussels, we are fostering a bond, will be continued by Liberia even at COP27. You have our commitment. Having said that, I also would like to encourage other countries like us, like those Cambodia, Jamaica, and those who have already started to execute the local mechanism, to see reason why we all should align ourselves to support local. Let us holistically advocate, because those of us who have read and follow practices in other countries can come here to safely say that it is a mechanism that is going to be holistic, fully engaging, and participatory. Adaptation in the simplest of its meaning, in my opinion, my dear sister, means behavioral change. It is not going to work unless the resources required are put in. Now that brings us to my conclusion very shortly, that Many of our countries write GCF, GEF proposals sometimes for 3 years. The complexity. We need a climate finance, but we don't have the capacity to develop the instrument to access the funding. So I write one project proposal, I send it, and it comes back with inquiry. If I took 8 months to write a proposal, the inquiry will take another 6 months to address. When I send it, it comes back for further verification, it will take another 4 months. By the time you know, we're gone 3 years. So I now come and find a mechanism that may not be the best, but it's close to being the best. I say, look, if you can't understand, I will stand there for you. In my country, there is a parable that says, the closer the flesh, the sweeter the bone. Local, we are together. Let me use this opportunity to say thank you for granting me the opportunity to be heard, and thank you for allowing me to talk to my colleagues and the countries to say, together we must go. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jefferson, for your very inspiring words. You mentioned dimensions of inclusiveness, participation, also holistic. That brings me maybe to another dimension to this effort by the countries that I might pose to Evans, as it relates to how local can actually align or is aligned with the NMA principles. Also in terms of, addressing the dimension of, integrated, holistic and balanced non-market approach per the decision, and also the linkages with maybe sustainable development and poverty eradication that somehow colleagues already touched upon to some extent. So, Evans, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sophie, our moderator, and good afternoon, distinguished delegates, my fellow panelists, and our keynote speaker, Dr. Ma, and also colleagues who are listening online. Thank you for this invitation to Malawi to be part of this thought-provoking event this afternoon. I think from our understanding, from our perspective of Malawi, I think we do consider that LOCO isn't operating in a vacuum. I think LOCO has aligned well with the principles of the non-market approach in Article 6.8 of the Paris Agreement. And we do certainly, of course, see that there is a clear and strong, of course, alignment with the principles that are set therein. As we left Glasgow in November 2026, I think we left with a number of messages, key messages, that relate to the non-market approach, Article 6.8. And if I were to list a few of them, I would start with the first one being that LOCO, as it stands, with its setting, it does contribute to, of course, the implementation of the national determined contributions. We heard, I think, this from our colleagues, Dr. Mao, and the colleagues from the SEEDS, and also my fellow panelists here from Liberia. How does it support implementation of the NDCs? It does so in the context of course, delivering on the country's sustainable development goals as well. We have national goals that feed into the 2030 SDGs. We heard earlier on from the keynote speaker that if we are to pull out some of the SDGs that we have set, we have climate action, combating climate action, we have water resources, we have biodiversity, of course we have poverty as number one, eradication of poverty. So all these also we have health issues, and as we implement LOCO, I think we are contributing to the addressing of these SDGs, but also coming from the national agenda items that we have set. And these will, of course, essentially contribute also to our poverty eradication of the people and providing food security and, of course, potable water to the people. So that will be number one. Number two is that we also consider that LOCO does enhance the linkages and synergies between mitigation on the one hand, we have adaptation on the other hand. But for us to implement mitigation, adaptation actions, we obviously need the finance, and this finance must be accessible. This finance must be adequate enough to meet the needs that our local people have in the local authorities. This is what I think my colleague from Liberia just indicated, presented. We also, of course, need technology for us to have water for the people, solar, like energy sources as well. And so LOCO brings in these, I think, interlinkages amongst these thematic areas. But obviously, we can't leave out capacity building, because for us to undertake climate action, we are here negotiating as maybe technicians, technocrats, experts in Bonn, but the most vulnerable people that we serve, we are working for in our rural communities, even in the peri-urban areas in our countries, they are not here, and they may not really understand what this hullabaloo is all about, and this climate emergency. They always ask when you go back, but what have you brought to us? What were you talking in those 20 days that you were sitting in Bonn, you go to Sharm el-Sheikh, you were in Glasgow? So I think we need that capacity building for the people to fully understand what we are talking about. Third point, Sophie, would be that LOCO, of course, is contributing to the achievement of the long-term temperature goal of the Paris Agreement. The seeds, the LDCs, where Malawi comes from, I think the African continent, we are advocating for at least 1.5 degrees Celsius. Of course, the Paris Agreement has the 2 degrees Celsius, but so we feel that LOCO will contribute to achievement of that. On the other side, we're also advocating for a pathway that will take us to climate-resilient development, at least by the year 2050. So this is also one of the areas that LOCO is aligning itself with the NMA approaches. And as we do all this, it would mean that LOCO is supporting the investment in sustainable development solutions, as I said earlier, such as investing in clean energy, or even now using the nature-based solutions that we have just started advocating for. I have a number of reasons, maybe half a dozen or thereabouts, but these three, I think, could take the lead for this. And Sophie, do you have any question for me? Follow-up question?
Well, I think we'll maybe invite Mr. Antwi to come next. Okay. I have no doubt there will be more questions. The goal was to keep 30 minutes for the audience to ask their questions. So maybe we'll conclude at this point. Thank you so much, Evans, for bringing those perspectives on really going back to the principles of NMA. Thank you also for highlighting this importance of linking the policy and the practice, which is what I think this panel is also evidence of. So thank you so much. I'm pleased now to invite our last speaker, Mr. Antwi-Boasiako Amoah from Ghana. So Ghana started local deployment in 2016. It's now implementing a second phase, meaning going to an increasing number of municipal and metropolitan assemblies, which are the local governments in Ghana, 13 by now. So Antwi, how can Ghana's experience in implementing local support this effort of recognition? Can you share your experience and views based on Ghana? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sophie. Good afternoon, colleagues, and hi to all the panelists who have assembled here today. And I also want to recognize participants who are also participating in this very important workshop online. First of all, I want to apologize for being late. I think I was stuck somewhere doing something that is also very important for the process. Looking at the discussions that we are having today, already 4 speakers have actually articulated how relevant the local mechanism is for developing countries. And I think I will start from a different angle so that in order not to actually repeat what have been said by the other colleagues. For Ghana, for instance, I want to also say that we are one of the key movers of the implementation of Article 6 in country. So far, we've advanced some processes for Article 6.2. 6.4 is now being put in place, and so no country has actually done so much work, except past experiences with the CDM mechanisms. But for 6.2, because it's bilateral, I think some countries have been taking initiatives, and Ghana is one of the early movers. And I think we also see a very good opportunity in advancing the work on 6.8, as the others have said, because this is something that actually addresses the concerns of the local people that we work with. We also want to actually say that we operate a decentralized system of government where we have about 261 district assemblies doing different things, addressing development from different contexts. And so they are key partners of advancing the implementation of the LDCs in Ghana. And so having a mechanism that probably see the needs of these local authorities is for us a big plus that we can actually align ourselves with. Local in Ghana is being implemented in line with a project that is currently being sponsored by the EU, known as the Green Project. And this project actually has the mandate for addressing some gaps that I think we find ourselves with the local governance system as far as climate change and sustainable development is concerned. And so what are some of the challenges that we're talking about? We're talking about weak or lack of institutional capacity to be able to address climate change issues. And then also the fact that climate change actually places an incremental burden on the assemblies, especially when it comes to adaptation. Those of you who follow climate change financing discussions and adaptation will come to the realization that there's always this question of what is additional in terms of adaptation. And so how can you justify that this is climate adaptation but not development? You need some special skills or knowledge to be able to actually scope what is development and then what is adaptation. And this capacity is actually lacking at the local level. For the district assemblies to be able to effectively develop proposals that are bankable for climate adaptation at local level, they need training, they need this capacity to be able to actually scope climate adaptation from normal development. One of the key issues that is also very important that we need to look at, that local seeks to also address as a gap, is the fact that in terms of budgeting for climate action on the ground, currently I think the centralized governance system doesn't recognize, or not recognizing, but is incapacitated to be able to actually channel money through the assemblies to be able to do climate actions on the ground. If you take the National Development Planning Framework, it actually recognizes climate change as a key developmental challenge. The National Development Planning Framework at the same time also recognizes the fact that to be able to do that, financing is very important. To talk about mainstreaming is not just having a document that talks about identifying challenges. To be able to close the gap of mainstreaming, you need to be able to actually have the issue of budget as the last end of the mainstreaming, so that whatever issues that have been articulated is actually addressed. And this is where budget becomes a very important issue. And so LOCAL seeks to actually, on its own scale, try to address this problem. And so as a country, we see this facility as very important because it is very systemic and it's scalable. Sophie just actually did mention the fact that we started with, I think, some 3 or 4 districts as a country. Now we are counting 13 districts, and we're still counting. I'm sure they're going to give us more support to be able to do about 30 districts. It means that it is something that is scalable, and it's also something that's systemic. Systemic because it is not running parallel with the system that the country is actually advancing. It actually uses the national structures, in this case working through the Ministry of Local Government and its affiliated institutions, to be able to advance this. And it makes it more sustainable because once you are not setting aside the national structures and giving mandate to the national government to actually do this within their mandate, it makes it more sustainable. Again, it's flexible because you are allowed as an assembly to actually address issues that suits your local conditions. Some assemblies may have issues probably related to coastal erosion. Others are having dry land conditions. Others may be looking at maybe cut off from some connections as a result of maybe flooding and so on and so forth. And so bridging the connection by having some local interventions that addresses this issue are very critical. And so this is something that places flexibility at the door of these implementers. And so I think that is something that we need to also highlight here. And then finally, just to also say that it's also standardized because you can actually have an approach that you can, somebody talks about, I mean, the guest speaker actually mentioned payment system where you actually look at improving working, and then once you're able to address an issue, you actually use that word as a basis to ask for payment. And so it's important to actually highlight this. In doing that, we are doing this within the framework of our NDCs. I mean, we have a lot of unconditional issues that have been put forward under the Paris Agreement as part of our NDCs. And this, as the others have said, is a good window to be able to actually close this ambition gap that we are talking about as far as adaptation effort is concerned. For me, since I'm a fan of adaptation and I negotiate for adaptation issues, one of the key blocks on the issue is how is adaptation going to inform the GST? And I think if you have an assembly that has been able to conduct vulnerability assessment, for example, this is something that is actually telling us that these are some of the key challenges at the local level one has as far as climate change is concerned. How are we going to address it? You have identified these vulnerabilities and you step it up by doing district adaptation plan or local adaptation plan. That gives you the leverage to be able to address these issues sustainably. And this is quantifiable, that one can actually put forward to inform the global stocktake that is ongoing. So it's something that we can align with and we can support because it has been working very well for our people at the local level. Maybe to end, politically, I think our leaders also see relevance in this because our Minister for Environment, he is one of the conservatives. And so for him to be able to endorse LOCAL as something that we can work with, then it means that it's something that we need to acknowledge. And so recently in Brussels, he was endorsed as, he actually endorsed to be one of the ambassadors. And I think now he's the 10th ambassador as far as the LOCAL mechanism is concerned. This actually gives us some kind of confidence that whatever comes from this platform can be nationally be absorbed into the national process. And so I will end by saying that, yes, indeed, we are all articulating the relevance of this mechanism. I think this process that we are all in is a party-driven process. And so I will encourage all parties that are in favor of this very important and novel system, whenever the opportunity comes, to either take the floor, either to make a submission, or either to insert a text that is going to be in favor of this system, please do, so that developing countries can be able to get flexible systems of assessing financing that can address the challenges of the local people. I just want to end here and say thank you.
Thank you very much, Antwi, for those word of conclusions. I think at this point I shouldn't wrap up anything, because you're just giving a heads up on what to do next as parties. This is really something that is should be led and is led by parties. There is not much we can do as observer ourselves to push this agenda, except support you and take stock of the 10+ years of experience of now 17 countries that have tested it or introduced or scaled it up. Actually, you should have mentioned that Malawi has now the first set of grants running as well, and then the 15 countries that are preparing next. With this, we have about 23 minutes for question and answer. So the panelists have been very experienced negotiators, very good practitioners and timekeepers as well. So I really hope we can take advantage of that time to have questions from the floor or from the online audience. So I'm not sure how we monitor the online audience. If there are questions, otherwise we might start with questions from the room. Thank you. Any questions? You've been listening patiently for about an hour, so I think it's fair that in case it can be, slightly side questions as well. I mean, we have also, colleagues that are very experienced on other agenda items. We mentioned the stock taking, there is the finance element, so let's take advantage of the time we have.
Or even comments.
Or comments, of course. Comments are, Yes.
Thank you. I am Dr. Subroto Bose from India. Thank you for your nice presentation. I was hearing from all colleagues attending this sub 56 meeting. Basically, when you talk about this non-market mechanism, non-market approach as such, in that case, what will be the overall institutional arrangement or fund flow mechanism, basically? What structure you follow? It will be governmental system, and you are doing all these local adaptive living mechanism, local activities as such. So it is through government, or it is by some NGO or some private entities as such. So how that mechanism propagate basically? So you do lot of activities across the country as such. So that is one of my questions. Thank you.
Are there other questions? Maybe you can take 2 or 3 in case, otherwise we'll address that one. Are there other questions that colleagues might want to raise? Otherwise, I might turn to some of the countries. I mean, in all the countries, somehow a flow of fund is already designed or has been used for many years. So would any of the panelists would like to take that and explain how it's actually operating in their countries? The question was whether, what are the institutional arrangements? There is a different institutional anchorage in every country. And also the flow of funds, the support is also through government. But maybe we can share a few examples with the colleague.
Or even if you don't elaborately, then it will be centralized or decentralized? That is my question, basically, in short.
Right.
Yeah, I think I can start.
Yeah.
I thank you so much for that question. I did indicate even in my presentation, probably maybe I was moving very fast. So in Ghana, for example, it goes through the government structures. And so you have a ministry of local government. This ministry is the ministry in charge of, let's say, decentralized structures of the country. So it's the ministry that coordinates all the local authorities in the country. And so this facility is actually coordinated and managed by this ministry, and then it's decentralized to the assemblies. And then it's, the beauty about it is the fact that in implementing this, you have institutional structures that cut across not only the host institution, there's a technical, working group, which you have almost all the key institutions, including private sector, civil society, and then other experts, providing technical guidance for the implementation of the project. I'm not belonging to that ministry, but I'm a member of the technical working group that I provide technical guidance because of my technical expertise in climate change issues.
Thank you. Would any of you would like to complement that, or before? And then I see another question, please. You want to? Yeah, please.
I could add as well, Sophie, as you take the question, that it's almost the same as in Ghana for Jamaica. The expectation is, and as I said in the presentation, that there is central government, but we also have 14 what we call municipal authorities that operate at the local level. And they all feed up and report to central government. So the expectation is that while the funds will flow into central because of one, it's one accountant general's account that manages every funds that come into government in Jamaica, and then it flows out. The expectation is that it will flow into government at the central level and then down into the national level. And that's very easy because that is how the government operates at that local level.
And in that case, basically, it is a top-down approach or?
It is a bottom-up approach because the facility is operating at the bottom. The facility, so all people's participation is at, because it is at the local level. It is the local authority. Our focus on the system of the interest is the local authority.
The activities are designed. The activities are designed by the local, or
it is designed by the local level.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much, facilitators, and for sharing your experiences. Of course, what I wanted to really understand, especially from the countries, of course, my name is Dyson Koma from Malawi. Yes. What I want to understand from the country that they have started implementing, or at least for some time, can they share the challenges they are meeting so far? Yeah, because I was really looking like back home, looking at my communities, really to have them come up with the interventions that are really relevant to what they want to achieve. It's not easy. They need a lot of capacity building for them to understand what are we talking about climate change. Yeah, what are we talking about adaptation? Okay, things like those. So our colleagues that we have already started, how effective are the activities that are designed by the communities? Because like in my country, when you go into the communities, there's a lot of illiteracy. So because of that, really, if you leave them, say, okay, can you design your activities, find that the activities that they are coming up, they are not those activities which can really tackle the real issues. So that's what I want to hear from the country that they are, have already started implementing. And probably even to Sophie, this facility, does it have a component on capacity building? Because our communities really, they need rigorous capacity building for them to come up with the meaningful activities. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. Possibly I'll invite colleagues from Cambodia, Dr. Hak, and maybe Mr. Antwi from Ghana, since you've practiced in your country the mechanism for the longest, to have a go.
Okay, thank you very much for the question. I think I want to compliment for the first question, and then I will answer the second question. I think it's similar to other colleague experience. Actually, the financial flow, of course, it come from the centralized. But in the case of our country, I mean Cambodia, of course, when we established the organic law, we established the national Committee for Subnational Democratic Developments, and then we want to transfer funds to the subnational authority to manage it. But the process is not that easy. We try, but it's difficult. However, with our performance-based project, we try to allocate the budget through the subnational authorities, and then we use the district as the hub in order to flow the money there, and then they can distribute to the communes. But the process is still, it's still difficult. But we do it right now. So I think maybe it case by case and country by country, but of course in Cambodia with the subnational decentralization, it may be a bit difficult process. And I think this one also linked to the second question. When we implement this project, of course we need to implement with the local people, and the local people, I would say that in my country the capacity building it too small. Some people, they don't know how to read. And even when we form the group, when we implement this approach, of course, we need to form in different group. And then, the leader of the group, even they don't know how to read. But they very famous in the area. So how we do with that, So we need to find recruit another assistant who can read and support him, but support her. So this process it also work, but it really time consuming and just the people, many people to do so. And I think the management not so effective. So I think it is the key challenge in our countries. However, we need to start from that. Otherwise, we cannot scaling up to the other area in the countries, and it place by place. And even the village chief, I don't mean just the local people, but even the village chief, some village chief, they don't know how to read as well. So it's very difficult. And then, just back a bit, even we have the subnational authorities, but for the project implementation, we still hire the consultant or firm in order to implement. And of course, they make awareness raising, capacity building, and so on and so forth. But the project is not that long. It's sometimes the project ends, but the people still not yet strong. So I think it is also experience, but we still have a follow-up activity with the people. That is why we try to mainstream our climate change activity into subnational development plan and budgeting, so that we want to sustain after the project end. So this is what I want to share. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hak. Maybe Antwi, you might go next, but I also would like to ask other panelists whether they would like to come in, because surely the challenges are also at the time of starting up and designing with various ministries. It's surely more complex than if it's just a single ministry. There are also the development partners to be managed with their own prerogative or preferences. So please, your experience would be also, I think, useful for countries that might be interested. Thank you. Antwi?
Yeah, thank you. I think I'll be brief, touching on some of the identified challenges. I think one of the critical issue is how to actually sustain the momentum that has been raised at the local level. In this case, largely this starts probably with funding that is limited, and so the project cannot actually achieve what is supposed to be in the end, because funding becomes a challenge. And so it's one of the things that most of the assemblies of the local people are facing. The reason is that, you start this very interesting things, and then the people's appetite is whet, and then in between, or suddenly maybe the funds ends, maybe at the end of the project. If they see something that is moving on, and this is where government intervention is very important, because the whole idea is not for the project or the mechanism to stay in the assemblies or the local level forever. They prepare the grounds, the institutions, so that government takes it off from there. That is one of the things that if government, and I did mention about support or budget from the government centralized system that is not forthcoming. And it's something that's probably one of the challenges. Another thing that we can talk of is the capacity at the local level. And that's why it's good, the question was, is there a component actually targeting capacity building? Capacity comes in various forms in this case. The capacity to be able to actually address climate change, the knowledge to be able to understand what the vulnerabilities are, and so on and so forth. These are actually not enough as it is. There's also, the project is developing what it's called LISA, which is what Local Climate Information System or something of that nature. Thus, you need data, you need the buy-in of the people, and then all stakeholders trying to be part of this very important system. I think for Ghana, it is something that has started and it has to be pushed forward to the level that is needed. I think there are a number of things that we can highlight about, but the key ones for me is the scalable part of the funding that, and I'm saying this because this local initiative actually was developed in Ghana along the boundaries of the African Adaptation Program. As soon as the AAP ended, the local came in, and I remember very well when the first consultant came to my office trying to understand in terms of scoping what can be done, and I gave a lot of indications, and I think it was modeled around almost the key issues that we discussed in that office. And one of the key things is the sustainability aspect. And this is something that probably all of us have to take note of. Thank you.
Thank you, Antwi. You would like, Oname? Yeah.
Thank you, Sophie. I wanted to add another level from my colleague in Ghana, because for us, the local government ministry is a completely different animal from the space that we operate in at the climate change ministry. Local government ministry, fix road, fix pipe, collect local taxes, nothing to do with anything that we do. And so to get the two ministries to work together to see the value in this mechanism was one of the hurdles that we had to cross. I think we got there just to even in the design of the program, to get the documentation from the ministry, it was something almost going to heaven and back. But because of who they are and what they do, it was really a challenge for even the minister himself, who is really a very hands-on ministry. He's a disaster ministry. He's responsible for the first response, and therefore it gives you that profile. If the flood is there, then he's on the front line. If there's a fire, he's on the front line, and therefore that is what they do. But they are responsible for the local authority, and therefore that challenge, to even overcome that challenge, was in itself. And I think because we were able to overcome that challenge, then I think it will be really, really good when we start the implementation. But that was a challenge, just to get the two ministries to see eye to eye that this would be important for them.
I might just hand over the floor, because we have, 5 minutes left. So I just would like to answer the question that was addressed to the local facility, and then hand over the floor back to Mr. Jefferson and Evans, if they agree, for the final words. So in terms of capacity building, yes, it is part of the approach. Every year when the local governments go through an annual performance assessment, the results are important for various reasons. First, the results will feed back into the formula, which is used to calculate the size of the grant. So the local governments that are better performing will get a slightly bigger grant or slightly lower grant. But then those annual performance assessments are also very much used to inform the capacity building support to the local government, but also to the central government, because as you've heard, there are a range of institutions with different mandates that each somehow play a part in the deployment of the financing mechanism. There is also amongst the type of activities that a local government can undertake after having selected them with the communities. It includes also elements of awareness raising, capacity building, also softer measure in a way that the local governments can decide to invest in together with their community. So that's very much part of the approach as well. And then expanding on the institutional strengthening, which may be somehow slightly different from capacity building per se. Indeed, like Mr. Antwi was mentioning, the sustainability is key. So as countries put in place such system, that is a challenge, I suppose, to go beyond project approaches so that various projects can eventually feed into a country system, despite the fact that projects have a limited time duration. So that is the challenge, the difference between the aid or that is largely project and the fact that it's being used in country systems. So that is also an important element of sustainability and institutional strengthening. I will stop here. We have 4 minutes left, so possibly 2 minutes for each events and Jefferson. And I understand also that Antwi will have to leave the room now for another meeting. So thank you so much, Antwi, for being with us for this event. Thank you. Over back to events or Jefferson.
Thank you very much, Sophie, and thanks to the audience. Of 3 or 4, just concluding maybe remarks or takeaway messages. The first one is that, as we have heard, I think local is a country-driven or country-owned mechanism, and it's aimed to work directly with the local authorities, the local people, to address their needs. So it's bottom-up. It's not top-down. That's point number 1. Point number 2 is that local is performance-based. So there are rewards. There's a reward if you perform better than your sister authority. This is how I think the funding modality is structured. So it's performance based. So we want to incentivize the practitioners, the communities, for them to perform better than their counterparts, so that come the next cycle, they can be awarded with a reward. A third point is that we need to, again, continue building capacity of the local people, the local communities, as we heard earlier on, for them to be able to actually isolate or understand what's incremental to development activities. So what is adaptation, climate adaptation, unlike just any development activity in the area. But this is a climate change adaptation facility. So we need to enhance that one. And finally, I think we'd also want to promote, find a way of how we can promote activities that bring in an impact, some transformation to the communities, so that we aren't doing things the usual way, business as usual, but there should be really some innovation, some transformation that the communities will realize from the investment that's been made. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Evans. And Jefferson, if you would like to conclude on the meeting itself, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Let me say thanks to each and every one of us, especially to the organizers of this very useful meeting. But I said this in Brussels, and let me restate, and not because my minister is in the hall with us, but let me re-emphasize this. We want to push an agenda, and this agenda is a country-owned initiative. The voices of leadership in our respective countries matters a whole lot in moving these processes forward. You will have to continue to encourage, as you did in Brussels. Bring the technicians in a room, but bring our superior voices along with us if your objective is to move as fast as possible. If that makes sense to all of us, then let me just say thank you for the meeting and wish us all the best.